So yeah, let's get started. I mean, I have quite a few slides, but normally this doesn't take more than around 60 minutes, including the slides as well as I mean there are quite a few bit of demo which I would be doing showing our app on the web as well as on the mobile platform and all that. So feel free to stop me anywhere, if you have questions, or please post that, like Ivy said, post that in the chat. We can always come back to that. So just a little bit of introduction, Purple Slate, and then, we are part of the iLink digital family, comprising of various companies focusing on different areas. Specifically, Purple Slate, from where I am, we focus primarily around conversational AI applications, especially this particular area and platform, which we're going to talk about today. It's around conversational insights long. So yeah, I mean, I've pretty much spent my time, majority of my time, I would say, in the data and analytics space. I've been running this startup for close to 6 years now, focusing on this technology. And before that, a significant portion of my time was in Wall Street, building technology, again, data related technology for the banks, right? So I thought, okay, why don't we start with the craze for today's topic? I mean, anything we talk about today, especially related to AI, definitely, I thought, it would make more sense to start with the Chat GPT. I'm sure, I'm not sure if there is anybody here on this call who have not played around with Chat GPT or heard about OpenAI and then the possibilities and all that. I mean, there is so much of news about it. I mean, people are literally fascinated by the various things ChatGPT can do, and including, I would say, it is very funny or rather interesting in the sense there was a lot of questions around, hey, whose job are you going to take first? So that's how much of craze ChatGPT has created over the past couple of months, including the most recent one with GPT-4, right? So I tried this interesting question, even with ChatGPT. So I was asking this question, hey, can you analyze large volume of data and answer questions? Right. I mean, of course, I'm sure this is even going to become a possibility in the coming days. But today, as you can see from I mean, I've just underlined a portion of the answer, which I found very interesting. See, the one aspect of ChatGPT that we have to keep in mind is anything generative. I think that the fascination is more towards generative because the way it is able to construct an answer out of all the data that it's been trained on and all that. So definitely there is lot of information has gone into this algorithm, to provide answers to whatnot. I mean, it is able to write answers. I mean, write programs, create machine learning models, so many things, debug issues, fix programming errors. Well, I mean, almost everything, it's able to do. But at the same time, I think, it's a language model. So it is pretty much, functioning very well on text-based data. But if you're really talking about numbers and, especially these days, with digitization, the amount of data volume, it's really growing. And I'm sure, as I said, um, there is going to be a chat GPT like interface even for numbers, in the coming days, no question about it. In fact, one of our solution, what we're going to talk about today, it is also something, very, very similar. So it's kind of, chat GPT kind of sets the tone for what it's really going to, we can expect in the coming years. But definitely today, the output, or rather, it's all more towards textual data, right? So with that, I thought I'll just start this, just setting some context, especially for people who have worked on data and analytics for a long time. I'm sure, you would be able to relate to whatever I have mentioned here. It's um, you know, definitely organizations, however small or big you are, there's a significant amount of effort being put on the analytics effort, and things do take time. Every project takes its own time to complete, both time as well as resources. And And also, with the amount of data, I mean, I would say one of the factor, or rather the primary factor, which also adds to the complexity is also around the metadata, right? Because there is so much amount of data. I mean, how do we even make sense of it without a right way to catalog those data assets, the business glossary, and then the business terms which are used by the business. And right, I think your metadata, again, metadata management itself is becoming a separate area these days. In fact, they're even talking about metadata warehouses and all that, right? So that's how much amount of data any large enterprises has these days. And the third one, I mean, I'm sure, again, someone who's, if you have worked on BI for a very long time, there is too many dashboards and scorecards and KPIs to track. And, so it's like there is one dashboard which says this, the another one, says something else. And then, there are just too many of them. And then, of course, the tools around self-service BI, see, I think they are also really becoming complex in the sense, it is what was supposed to, help us make life simpler. It is also really becoming complex, and then a rocket science, right? So I mean, just a quick tidbit in terms of again, this is a stat from one of the research which says typically information workers spend close to 20 to 30% of the time looking for information, right? I think when, especially, say for example, it could be that you are in a meeting with a customer, or you are in an airport, you're getting a call, or rather, you're in a meeting. The scorecard or the metrics, what we have at any point in time is really not becoming sufficient to provide the answers. There is always this one extra question for which we may have to either get back, or rather, we keep exchanging emails, we keep calling somebody and all that, right? Um, and also, I mean, I thought, okay, this is one very interesting statistics, which came out recently in one of research paper as well, right? Everything else around our life, whether it is the Uber or the flight or whatever, I think everything else is shrinking. The amount of time it takes for us, and still the information access, it's relatively takes a good amount of time, right? Why should this be like this? Why can't even the information access, just like how we would, whenever there is something, we need, we always text somebody, right? Text of a friend or a coworker or anyone who's knowledgeable, we just text them, hey, by the way, do you know this? Where is this? What is this? And all that. Can there be a similar experience even for data, right? I mean, why should this take so much amount of time, right? So, I mean, just to put in perspective, I tried to summarize in terms of, what is the today's more information needs are, right? So, I mean, I just tried to summarize it, just highlighting few. One is, as I said, trustworthy insights. How do we even make sure that the numbers are, trustworthy, or rather they're reliable, right? And there are so many diverse user persona. Each one of them have their own information need, right? Whether it is the operational workers to the management, to the senior management, everybody, they have their own information need. And then, um, and more than that, as I said, we also need it faster and at scale. I mean, the amount of data that has been captured these days, it's just humongous amount of data in large enterprises. And so how do we really address these requirements? I thought, okay, this may sound like very, very, what I would say. I mean, yeah, it's very typical requirements, but at the same time, in today's technology, powered by AI, can it really help us achieve this? Is what we're going to talk about, and I'll also show you some quick demos in terms of how our application helps users achieve some of these things, right? So just to the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to set some a few slides to set the context on why we feel the tool which I'm going to show it's really could help, right? See, I think the reality of today's data rich digital world is this, right? I think there is so much amount of data. Users still struggle to get quality access to quality data. And then, as I said, more and more, we have what is called as the momentary information need. Okay. I mean, I gave those scenarios. It could be in a meeting, you're talking to a customer, or rather, in the airport. At this particular instance, we're always on the phone and then, chatting with somebody, but at the same time, we are spending time, calling someone to access the data, or really number crunching our Excel sheets, or, various reports, trying to get the answers, with data, right? And also, there are too many BI tool sets. I mean, especially since we cater to so many diverse user persona, right? There is one tool for this. I mean, there is a self-service tool, there is a dashboard, there is a scorecard, reports, Excel sheets, whatnot. I mean, there are plenty of them, used by different people. And at this, and the sixth one, I'm sure, it's also very common. I can definitely relate to it, having spent so many years, with data and BI, right? I think this is a very familiar, area of concern for many enterprises. It's just like, analytics projects, they do take their own time, right? So the other thing is, while we are looking at so many different diverse BI reports and tools, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is, if you really think about it, we are trying to get answers to questions, right? So I've just given a few examples here, in terms of, hey, when I'm really analyzing my website's performance, or rather, the visitors, I'm trying to get answers around, hey, what pages do users really spend time on? What is the bounce rate for this page, right? Or rather, there are like so many different which so many different answers for the different BI users, in terms of, I think these answers is what is really, helping us do our day-to-day work, right? So all these are basically, even though we try to get these answers through the various BI tools and reports, at the end of the day, these are all questions. That's what we have in our mind, right? So our motive is more around, hey, if these are the questions we have, why can't we just let the users ask these questions, right? So what do I really mean by that? I mean, let me just quickly jump to one demo here. I'll just show this while, just give me 1 second. Okay, so this is where you can see my screen now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I was telling you about, how a conversational approach could really help. I mean, say if you really look at it here, just like how we have a chat interface, right? I mean, whether it is Microsoft Teams, Slack, or Google Chat, whatever it is, right? I think a similar interface, similar experience can be really used to get answers. Say, for example, I'm going to ask questions like, say, let me take this here. So this is on a, I mean, one of, data set for an insurance industry around health insurance, right? So basically, I'm just trying to get an idea of, say policies, or let me even make it a little bit. So, okay, so I'm just asking a question like this, and it's so it just comes back, just gives me the data, the number, and so many other things, right? Now, say for example, I can even change this question to say, instead of specific yes, a time frame, I can even modify it to something like, hey, say, let me pick a kind of say Georgia, okay. Uh, So now, I mean, since it is trying to analyze the data, right? So it just, hey, by the way, you mentioned Georgia. I know it is a state, but there are so many other data attributes here, which one are we really talking about? So I just say, hey, this is for the customers. I'm just basically trying to find out how many customers, or rather, in Georgia did we get, right? So now I have something like this, just how we would have a conversational interface, right? So I was looking at the data for, say, Georgia. Now let me, even I can change it to, by the way, how about, say, Alabama? See, it carries the context from the previous question, because we were really talking about the data for, for the time frame of first quarter of 2021. And it knew that, hey, but Alabama is also a state very similar to Georgia. So I'm just going to use the context from my previous question, and then I'm trying to get the answers, right? So now I could engage a conversation. Say for example, I can even go, okay, by the way, so now all it's going to do is it's going to retain from the previous question, say Georgia instead of the time frame of first quarter. I mean, I can keep, just going on engaging in a conversation like this, right? So I can do it is asking me, hey, by the way, would you like to segment it by any of these dimensions, or and even if you look at the response here, there are quite a few in the sense, one is it's able to get the numbers, and then there is, since we are talking about a quarter, it just gives me a visual of for by the date, and it is also giving me a few more insights in the sense, by the way, hey, this gone up by say close to 72% over a similar time period. So it's like basically compared to the first quarter, so this number has really gone up by this, and you have an option to look at the underlying data. There are so many things like this, right? So this is exactly what really mean by a conversational interface. So you have um, like just how we would engage in a conversation, with our fellow human beings. Now you are basically chatting. In this case, a platform. I'll just explain a little more, in the coming slides. Our platform, which is Kia, it's completely white labeled for any enterprise application. So it's you have an ability to onboard any data sets. I mean, so I have quite a few examples here, right? And you just pick, in this case, I'm using a health insurance data set, and you just start engaging in a conversation, and then try to get these answers, right? So when we say that it is a conversation, it's you are not just limited by any specific metrics or all these things, whatever you see, that all these answers, these are coming out of the box. You are not just constrained by any particular or rather predefined questions and answers. All these on, say for example, so these are the various, I mean, this is the data glossary for this particular one, right? I mean, these are grouped by numbers to categories to, whatnot. You can ask any kind of questions on this. Say for example, I can say, hey, so I'm just talking about, say for example, I don't know the attribute name, right? So what I can do is I can go here, say this is the, so I can just bring it here. Um, and say I just want to look at it by across, say a particular product type. Okay, so now it's just going to give me the answer for this particular one, right? I think that's the whole idea behind having something like a conversational interface. When you really try to ask these questions on the data, in simple English constructs, right? So now with this context, let me just jump back to the slides. Um, so that's what I was basically saying. Given the maturity of the conversational AI, the various technologies, so it's more like we have interfaces today. I mean, including like the typical computers or the smartphones and all. We have an ability to, where the interfaces can very well understand the language we speak, both in voice and text. The language understanding models, the underlying, say for example, the one which I just showed you, this runs on top of Microsoft Azure, right? So some of these, the underlying language understanding modules are extremely mature, right? And then of course, the approach we take is, you have an option to mature them continuously, because um, it does, I mean, any machine learning model kind of evolves over a period of time. So it does have an ability to, continuously get retrained on data and then, mature. And of course, you have an ability to pull that information back, and also, what do I really mean by, supporting actions and all? I just showed in a very quick period of time, so once you have an answer, can I use this to take action? Say for example, I may want to create an action item for someone who's responsible for a particular and the data point which I just had, right? So all these kind of it's really helping us, rather supporting us to have take a conversational approach, for business intelligence, right? And the another thing, which I really wanted to set the context again, I'm sure, many of you who've been through the data and the analytics industry, right? The way it has matured, starting from the age of mainframe computers to the reports, spreadsheets, each one of them, if you really go back and look at the last 30 years, it has gone through an evolution where while the technology has improved, where I have stopped right there at the mobile AI, I mean, the amount of time it takes for us to get access to information has also basically shrunk. Whatever used to take weeks, days, now, it is almost like today for every other information, we are just going to the popular search engine, asking Bing or Google, and then, so something similar, if that is what, we are using for our personal needs, why can't there be a similar, experience requirement, even for the enterprise data? So that's what we really mean by momentary information, right? And how do we achieve it? So that's, that's why I'm saying, it's like a tool like, or a platform like Kia, where you really have the ability to just ask this question in simple English, right? And the another thing, another metaphor I just want to quickly relate to is, it's just, as human beings, how do we even consume information? It's basically whenever we have a question, we just, whenever there is an information need, we ask a trusted resource, and then, we try to get the answer. And this kind of, goes on in a cycle till we have all the necessary information need, so it's like it goes in an iteration. Once we have it, all the information, whatever we need, we just kind of use it to take action. That's precisely the similar approach is what, we feel, which we could do, with a conversation. I mean, I just showed this example where if I'm really analyzing, say, the insurance claims data for a particular time period, I could look at basically, I mean, today I could be doing the same thing with a dashboard or a report, right? Slicing and dicing data, trying to get the answer. Rather, at the end of the day, hey, what am I really trying to look at? There is, if at all there is an issue, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it by looking at the data at different dimensions and different perspectives. Those perspectives, we're just saying, why can't we just ask those as questions? One finally, when what we really end up with, oh wow, okay, this is what is really interesting. Let me do something about it, right? I think those interactions, which we really go take in a bunch of questions back and forth, it's more aligned with the conversational approach, right? I think that's precisely why we feel, a platform like this would really could be the way forward, in the BI world, right? So if this is what we need, I mean, right? I mean, look at what we have today. It's more like there are so many dashboards and metrics and scorecards. I mean, every team, every department, every individual, I think they have their own, the dashboard. There is just too much of, metrics. And sometimes, there is just too much of information, but not exactly the one, where we really need that answer that always, since we end up missing that, right? And the getting access to it, it's still a bit too technical, whether it is from query languages to spreadsheets to whatnot. Everything almost in many places, even for us to build a dashboard, or rather, even if it is a self-service dashboard, it becomes like an IT project. Someone has to really work on it before we really, try to get those answers, right? So there is good amount of, I mean, especially for business folks, when they really need to get access to information. There is a good amount of work that is still involved, and then to get that particular information, right? And which finally leads to, I think that the most important one, which is there is a good amount of time it takes, right? So the box which I have highlighted here to getting access to the information and hence decision making, that takes forever. I mean, sometimes, it just runs into months before the users really get access to the information they really need, right? I think this is pretty much, or rather, I can summarize since it's the information challenge today, right? So if I have to put it this way, today, right, with the way digital technologies have evolved, it is not necessarily about the information capture and the storage technologies, and the way we capture them at very, very high velocity. stream data, and all these technologies have evolved really well. The cost of storage has also come down drastically, where your unit cost for data storage is so much affordable. The problem has really moved into getting access to it. How do we really make this data available? For time, with especially with the speed at which we really need access to that. I think that's precisely what has really become the problem. And then how do we really solve this? Is where we're going to focus on, right? So, and there are two more aspects which I just want to highlight here. It's around what we really call as findability and discoverability. I mean, basically, how easy it is for someone to locate that information. And given the amount of data we have, it's not just about the straightforward answer. It is also about what could be some of those unknown unknowns. Oh, this is interesting. I mean, something, locating a piece of information which is kind of latent, and then that particular insight, which oh wow, I didn't know this kind of moment, right? How easy it is for the users to achieve these two. So just to give an example, the findability and discoverability. I mean, so it goes like this, right? So what is the revenue last quarter? I mean, it's a very straightforward answer. It could be $1 million. That is how easy it is for me to get this answer. The discovery part is, by the way, hey, how this 1 million is arrived. By the way, do you know that these two products contribute a significant portion of it? Either it is a piece of information which is very useful to me, or something which I need to be acted upon. Maybe there are other products which are not really giving or rather there are certain regions doing well, certain regions not really doing well. How these kind of insights, especially when we have very, very large data sets, right? I think that I mean the tools, or rather the modern day applications have to really help in this discoverability, right? Another example is around this. Hey, say for example, what is the code count today, right? Yeah, this is the amount, but a significant portion of this is the way it is distributed, and this is where maybe these are the areas where we really need to focus on, right? And it goes like this. Say, even if I'm looking at my website statistics, say in Google Analytics, it's like how many visits do I have? I mean, there is a good amount of, we just launched a new website, and then, there is a significant amount, by the way, but at the same time, we have a very high bounce rate. 90% of the people, they don't even cross the homepage, right? I think these kind of both the facts, one is the straightforward answers, as well as the insights, the significant insights, which really contribute to that, or some of them, which are kind of latent and hidden. I think both these aspects are very, very critical, in today's world. Right? So, see, as the goal of any good information system, I think it has to help us achieve both. Right. So this is what I meant, or rather, what we really call as, I didn't know that. I think, that's interesting kind of moment. Those kind of moments are rather, the analytics tool has to really help us achieve those. So how do we really do that? I think, so this is what we're really saying, when today, when the users have a momentary need for information, rather than going with the traditional reports and BI, why can't they just have the ability to ask these questions, right? Or rather, I mean, as I said, can we just have them just ask? So here are some examples. In fact, these are all some examples from the applications, which we have built for some of our customers, right? Including the insurance to whatnot. I mean, the one very good use case which we really have, it's around, the healthcare space, where the doctors really engage in a conversation. The fourth one, what you see here, so it's like the pets treated with a particular drug name for a particular medical condition. All these, the doctors, I mean, they kind of use language interface. And then the last one is also something, which we did. It's more around, I mean, even on the project management side, or rather, on the engineering side, I mean, where, hey, what frame rail options did we really use in this particular? And then so basically, the users kind of ask, or rather, start consuming the data in simple English constructs, and then the application kind of, it just brings back the data. Any size, any database. So I think, I'll just talk about some of those aspects as well. So, and like the example I showed, the response kind of comes back both as in text, as well as, you have the ability to look at them, as visuals, and it's and the conversation kind of goes continuous. I mean, you start with one, and then you just keep in start. Just like how we would talk to fellow humans, right? So, I mean, another example. Say, for example, if this is the question I have, hey, I'm trying to understand the sales data and say, hey, which region is really doing well on this particular product, right? So the way we could do that, say maybe this is the way most of us are consuming information today. There are a whole bunch of dashboards and metrics I have, and I'm trying to get that answer. I'm trying to interpret these dashboards and trying to get an answer. Instead, can we just have pointed answers like this? Hey, which region is doing well? By the way, it is this particular region for this with this amount. And by the way, I mean, the last what you see as a chart and all are more towards the discovery. By the way, do you know that this particular product is really contributing X amount of percentage for this particular region, right? So some additional insights related to that, right? I think this is what we really calling it as a conversational approach. I mean, if you really contrast that to the traditional approach what we have today versus more on the conversation side. And it's at the same time, as I said, I mean, I started with this example around OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? I mean, you can see that Microsoft Office, they launched last week a Copilot where most of the Office 365 applications are now going to be integrated with OpenAI components. So definitely the coming days, I think, OpenAI and then the GPT approach is really going to revolutionize many of the stuff, which we consume today, sir, right? So how would the traditional BI really evolve, in a GPT or AI first world? I think that's where we are really seeing, applications like this, with the conversational AI approach. It's definitely, we see that having a tremendous impact in the coming days on how we really consume information. Almost everything. I mean, that if you really look at some of the applications, or rather what people are trying to do with ChatGPT, it's just unbelievable, right? So how would BI world be, in like say in another 5 years from now? I mean, so today this is the way we are doing it, but how would this be in an AI first world, right? So that's what we really call as, I mean, the Kia it's a platform. We call it as really talk to your data, with Kia. So it's basically you just ask questions like this, like, hey, show me the daily trend of policies by intermediary type, not limited to any specific standard set of questions. Your question is basically a combination of whatever data attributes you have. So you just frame it in the way which makes sense, and then the application is able to understand it, access the data, come back with the response in both text, voice, as well as visuals. That's what we really call as a conversational AI approach, right? So what exactly is Kia? I mean, if I have to give a simple, it's almost like your data buddy, or rather, it's like a virtual data analyst. I'll just quickly talk about, how we train data sets into this and how it's able to respond back and all that. But basically, it is virtual, and this application is completely white labeled. What I really mean by that, even though our platform is called Kia, our installations are given by go by different name, whether it is Oscar, Ginger, Twinkle, whatnot, right? So all it's a white label software, and or rather a smart data analyst, which you can embed this within, with any of your other applications and all that, right? So any questions so far? I know I've been ranting a lot about this. Any questions? Any comments?
Please feel free to add your questions on the chat so that we can answer them.
Great. So yeah, it's almost close to 45 minutes since we started. Let me just quickly show you more about this platform, as well as I'll also show you more examples in terms of about the applications on more on the conversational AI approach and all that, right? So see, I mean, in this example, which I showed some time back, in terms of whenever there is an information need, how we really talk to a knowledgeable person, or so that part we are just we're trying to abstract it with a software like this, right? Where now you have an ability to ask questions to this application, right? So at a very high level, this is what we were saying. Hey, if I have a data set like this, the data set could be in any form. Whether it is a simple Excel sheet, CSV, or any large databases. How do we really train this, or rather, have our application, be trained on this data so that before it can start responding to questions like this, right? So it goes through a very simple step, in terms of training your data, and then we do have an application which helps you achieve that, including when we talk about a language interface, right? See, it also brings its own challenges, or rather, nuances in terms of vocabulary. I mean, because there are people refer to the same term, by different names. Say, for example, I may call it as a profit. Somebody else could call it as, a margin. So how do we make sure that, hey, both of these really mean the same thing, or rather, it is a state here, maybe a province, it means the same thing. So how do we understand? Rather, somebody could refer to a location, city, all these stuff. I mean, in fact, it even goes back. I mean, if you take some specialized fields like engineering or healthcare, it is a lot more complex there. In fact, we work with a healthcare company. So there, the challenges are, say, for example, that could be a drug name called doxycycline. So some of the doctors refer to a doxy, some of them refer to a doxycycline 10 mg, 10 milligram. All these variations still need to be, understood by their application before it can even respond back, right? So there are, I mean, so we do have ways to train the model with all these variations. At the same time, I mean, there is also, we have a low code interface which lets you do this without, writing much code. I think I'll show a demo of those things as well, right? So basically, as I said, all you really have to do is train your underlying data set wherever it is, right? I think, on this platform, and then it starts responding to questions. So, I mean, again, as I said, I mean, not just these. We support a wide variety. I've just shown some examples in terms of what some of the databases which we support, but absolutely, even there are installations where, so say, for example, they already have um, the Power BI data set, or, it could be a Tableau workbook. Even it can even source data from there, and then, train our models, and then, start responding to questions. So wherever the data is, the enterprise data is as simple as, as I said, from your CSV or in simple Excel sheets to any large enterprise databases, data warehouses, lake houses, wherever it is. I think, we can source the data, train our models for it to answer, right? And and also, I mean, if you take any typical enterprise setting, the data is not static. It evolves over a period of time, right? I mean, almost near real time, right? I mean, so even this kind of, we do have ways to achieve this through data pipelines. You can, the training, or rather the continuous training, can happen on scheduled ways, either it's daily, or, on whatever the time frame is, or even real time, so you have an ability to push the data through streams, and then, use that to train the model, right? And so there are quite a few applications and variations of it, which we have. I'll also show this quickly. I just briefly showed you this chat application. And so we also have something called as a widget, search widget, which you can embed. And there is also a mobile app, primarily, for the users on traveling, as well as, it's just like how you pick up your phone, talk to Siri, or you just chat with a friend. I mean, you can ask those questions even on a mobile phone, So this is the ecosystem. The one, the widget, search widget, the chat, and the mobile app. All these are together for the training needs. How do you really train, or rather get an application up and running? Right. I think that's where it really helps. It is a complete low-code framework. I mean, absolutely, the magic kind of happens without the user writing a single line of code. All those visuals, whatever you saw there, it just comes out of the box, right? Its ability to crunch those numbers, understand, convert it into a query, respond back in visuals, voice, and all that. Everything kind of happens, out of the box through this low-code interface. Just have highlighted. some of the features, especially there are a couple of one, which I really want to talk about or rather highlight is around the security aspects of it. It has very well integrated a role-based access control module where you have an ability to define roles in terms of who really gets access to this data and all that, including ability to manage even PII data. You can define rules in terms of, hey, these are sensitive information, these should not be exposed back, or rather, who can really see this. All those data governance modules, or rather, your ability to define data governance rules and all that are, built in within this application. And as I said, one of the critical element, or rather, element of today's data analytics, it's also around the glossary. You have an ability to manage the glossary along with this, including, I told you, there are definitely, in a language interface world, people do refer to the same attribute or the term in multiple ways. So how do you really maintain a vocabulary? How do you really add synonyms? All those are kind of, I'll just quickly show that as well. All those are available as part of the application, right? Basically, the primary reason, rather the biggest advantage of this low code framework is time to market. For you to get an application up and running, it's absolutely no time. If you have the data readily available, it's you can have an application up and running in like just few minutes. That's what it takes. Again, a quick summary of the features. And so in summary, what does it really, our platform kind of brings is around, it's a simple conversational interface, with your ability to ask questions in English. Right. And the goal, as I said, it's primarily how do we really simplify the data access, just like, how we use any of the traditional search engines or many of the messaging platforms we do today, right? So that is our whole objective. Can we try to replicate a similar user experience for data, right? So now let me just quickly jump into a few more demos here, right?
Siva, we have a question.
Sure.
How are the data sources cataloged as trusted?
Um, See, I think, this is more of, if I understand it correctly, it is more of a data management, in terms of how I would say, the application kind of has very less role to play in that. We still leave it to the data stewards or the data owners towards the, because all these, what we're really talking about is these are not public data. I mean, this within an enterprise, these are still very much, we leave it to the data owners and then the data stewards to take care of it. So it's towards trustability and all that. I would say, I don't think, we are really leaving it to the AI application at this time. It is definitely, handheld, or rather, it is controlled by, let me put it this way, humans, whether it is the data owner or the data steward. I don't know if I answer the question, but it's more, my point is, it's more towards, it is very much controlled. The trustability is very much within the control of, the data owners. Because we're really talking about enterprise data which is used for decision making and all. So now let me quickly show you one aspect of it, which is around the just give me 1 second. I'm going to share my mobile phone. Can you see my screen, Bharat?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so let me show you the app. So this is the Kia mobile app, right? So it's basically, there is a whole bunch of data sets, it has access to. Say, for example, let me pick this one, and so I can have so I can just go and ask a question. I mean, both in the voice mode as well as the text mode. Say, for example, I'm just going to ask this question. So mostly, even on the way some of our customers have even used it, it is it's kind of available in an iPad on a meeting room. So it is almost like you have this as a data buddy for many of the meetings, right? Say we are analyzing particular, say a quality, anything like that, so it is almost like having the data analyst, virtual data analyst sitting on the, sitting along with you on the meeting room, right? I think this is the way one of our, engineering customer had really used it. Um, this application is available in an iPad. So whatever questions, since it is trained on the latest data, this is kind of, it responds back in voice as well. So in this case, if this is a question we asked, and say for example, if this is one, I really want to have the follow-up conversation with another human. So what I can do is I can start a discussion, or rather, I can invite another, person who's really responsible for this. So right, and then I can bring them into the conversation, and both of us can analyze this problem, and then have engage in a discussion, and then on this. So the way it works is, rather than how we normally do it today, when something like this is there, I'll take a screenshot, or rather, share this report with somebody in an email and ask them, hey, can you look at this? Why is this number going like this and all, right? And then that person has to respond back in an email in an offline way. Rather, what we're really saying is, so there is this AI, the chat conversation AI solution available, this Kia. Why can't we the other users who all need to work together, work together on the same problem, engage, start work on a discussion, sort it out, and then all of us see the same information, and then we just that's the primary intent of using it, or rather engaging in a conversation with other users. And also, I mean, just like how we have the chat, whether it's your typical email inbox, the conversations are grouped by date. You have an option to make it your favorite, and whole bunch of data sets, whatever it is. I think you can quickly. I mean, I was just showing you on the web application. So we were looking at the same questions. You also have access to it on the mobile phone as well. So all this data, all these information is it's available across the different channels, and you get to see the same output across different channels, right? So yeah, this is, remember, if this is that information which we just saw like 30-40 minutes back on the web, right? And this mobile app is also completely white labeled. As I said, we have this as a Skia, but many of our users, they have it on their own, branded, smart analyst. So they have their own name, colors, everything is completely customizable, and then that's the way that the users really use this, right? So let me come back to the website. So um, this, I mean, coming back to the other, the web application, I also talked about the search one. So this is the chat interface, where, I mean, as I said, very similar to the mobile app. Even here, you can bring in different users to the conversation, and then, right? And you can just say, and then, say if this is something I really want to have a conversation with somebody, we can do that right here. That is one, right? And this is the search widget part, other application which I was telling you. It's almost like a search bar, just yeah, just like how you have a chat interface here, where you ask the question. Here it is a simple search bar kind of interface, and then this search bar again, it's completely white labeled, and so say for example, this is a question which we just saw on the mobile phone. This it kind of it's almost like your search engine like interface, and you can embed this search widget on any of your other enterprise applications, right? I think that way, that's why we also call this as more as a chat widget. And even here, it also has this as a question in voice as well as text. And there is one important feature, which I thought, I'll just show you. See, we were talking about how dashboards, that there are like so many dashboards, and then, we also talked about the scenario around death by metrics and all this, right? So what we're really trying to, one way, we could really solve this is, say, for example, I am regional sales manager, or rather, I have my sales review meeting coming up this Friday. I'm just trying to gather some data, right? What we normally do, we kind of assemble those, metrics in a presentation, getting ready for the meeting and all that, right? So what we have really tried to reimagine that whole scenario is something like this. Say, I'm just asking a question on. So this is the sales data, and then I'm just trying to slice and dice this by, say, by category, and so I have this particular information, and then I'm also trying to say, hey, so it's like, hey, let's just go by the number of orders, right? So what is the most popular shipping mode that was used? So it just tells me, hey, standard class is the most common one used. So basically, we ask a whole bunch of questions. So now, say, for example, I like this. I can say that, hey, I can create what is called as a storyboard. Let me add this story here. So let me, hey, so I'm just trying to create a story for this, and I'm also adding, hey, this is. Something like this, I mean, I just keep adding. So I also add another one, like, say, I'm also looking at, say, Utah here, again by orders. So I'm responsible for both these regions. So I have the information for California now. I also have this, so I'm just adding it to my weekly review. I add it here, and so whole bunch of questions, right? I can ask, hey, uh, so it just gives me this. So I also add this to my storyboard, right? So now I have something like this. I mean, so I have a storyboard created. On the meeting side, what I can really do is, so I have my weekly review, all these different stories created. The best part about this is I can use this for my meeting, to really run a presentation rather than having a presentation with static images, right? Here, I really have a whole bunch of metrics, and these are real time, in the sense when I move across this, it is basically, it still gets me the data as of that particular moment. It is not really images. And even at this time, if suddenly, usually the way the meetings happen, someone would have a question, on this particular data point, right? You have an ability again, to come back and ask that question. So this is one of the, I mean, the significant upticks, what we really see, or rather, some of our users have used it. It's like you're not just limited to the three story points, what you really have. Okay, so it basically, it is a live data. It's like, even though you're running it more as a presentation, it just the most current or the most live data, is just what is really bringing it out of it. At the same time, you also have an option to any other questions. Usually, that the meetings end up with, so you're not really, the way it now would normally happen is by, hey, let me get back to you on this, right? I think that's kind of very common way in which, we normally do that. Instead, since you have an interface like this here, any of those follow-up questions could be asked right there. And to just to go with your presentation. I think this is one very common which many of the users use. It's around this concept called storyboard. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So I mean, we just saw, I mean, as I said, the three applications. One is the chat, the search widget. The other one, I also showed you the mobile app. Let me just show you the one, which is the studio, which where you really use to train your, so it's um, train your data set, or rather, how do you really train this application key on, all these different data sets, right? So let me show you this. um, So these are the different data sets which we have really, how do I really train these data sets? It goes like something like this, so if you can upload it via a file, or you can say, for example, you can even connect to a database. Say it could be your Salesforce data sitting in, or rather, your HubSpot data, CR, anything. Any of those, I mean, we have an ability to source the data through API, and how frequently you get it, you have all the option, to schedule those as well. Either, or if the data is sitting in a database, you can even connect to it. Or as I said, you can connect to a live application. Just provide the endpoint with few other configurations, and now that this application is going to source it, based on the time frequency which you define, and then that is what is really used to train the underlying models, for it to answer. Say, for example, the one which we have here, this is purely, it runs through APIs, right? And I also talked about the glossary management. So say, for example, that there are different attributes here, and so we have this, the data types and all, and this is where you really define the synonyms. Say, for example, I have an attribute called created by, but I would like to refer this in the question as a creator. Or if there is something else, I say, even if I want to call it as, say, an engineer. So the kind of, I mean, I think there is another one. It's already, so it says it's a duplicate, right? It's here. So it says, it is already used. So anybody who's asking these questions could refer to this particular attribute either as an engineer, developer, or assigned to it. Kind of, you kind of build a vocabulary, because vocabulary is it's extremely critical, for your language understanding, for even the model to respond back with the right question and all that, right? So I think this is the studio where you really have an ability to define those synonyms and the glossary. And I mean, I also talked about, the security part of it. Say, for example, if you mark these fields as sensitive, or rather, it would consider that as a PII information. So in the responses, these data points would be masked. And the other thing is, you also have an option to specifically enable it for few users, right? All those, options are available, within the studio, for every data set. I mean, you can onboard as many data sets as possible. And this is where, so all those trained data sets is available. And then, you can just go back and change a data set, ask again, ask some additional questions specific to the data set. So this is one, where we have the defects, or rather, for the quality related information, right? So I can just ask what person, I can ask questions like this, right? Hey, show me the defects by status. So it's just going to answer those questions, specific to this data set. So what are some of those attributes, so that's what I really have here, right? Every data set, irrespective of what, I mean, the application doesn't care. All it, whatever the data, it's going to be trained on, it can respond back. Right. I think that is the whole power of this application, in terms of you achieve all this, through a studio like this, and then you just keep training different data sets, and the application kind of understands it, and then it has an ability to respond back, very similar to the chat GPT kind of interface, what we just spoke. I mean, while that is mostly on the underlying text-based data, here, this application, our application kind of has an ability to even crunch the numeric or any other data types, and then, come back with the responses, right? Any questions? Okay, so let me go back to the last few slides, right? See, as I said, I mean, what does Kia really bring? It's a simple conversational interface with the ability to ask questions in voice and visuals. And definitely we value, or rather, the application is built with the fun, on the fundamental design premise around security, privacy, and all that. I think in today's way, especially in an enterprise context, that is a key factor in terms of what kind of data it is able to respond back, who really gets to see this. There are a lot of controls in place, in terms of for any user to define rules on who really gets to see what data and all that, right? Completely built on Azure. We make use of all the Azure cognitive services, from speech services to language understanding. The whole application is, even though it is cloud agnostic, we can deploy it on GCP, AWS, and all, but primarily many of our implementations are run on Azure. So it is AI neutral, cloud neutral, and it can be hosted as a SaaS, as well as we most of our enterprise implementations are behind their firewall. We just kind of bring our software, it runs, so that none of the data really goes out, right? So this application runs within your firewall on whatever your vendor cloud platform is, including Microsoft Azure. And by the way, this application can also be exposed as a bot, as a Microsoft Teams bot, right? So if you are using Teams or Slack within your enterprise, so this, rather than trying to use a separate web application, you can also expose this as a bot, a T bot, within Microsoft Teams. So you can ask these questions within Microsoft Teams itself, right? Um, just few use case themes, like very what we've really done in some of those places, how this could be used. Very simplified access to data with a simple search interface kind of stuff, which I showed. We call this as a question widget. This widget could be, embedded just with few lines of JavaScript code. You can embed this on any of your application, right? With the mobile app, for any of your users on the move. And today, pretty much, our life revolves around smartphones. So just like how we would pick up the phone to chat with a friend, any of your data, whether you're in a meeting or traveling, you can just, pick up this mobile app and then ask these kind of questions on your data, rather than trying to say, for example, if I'm a project manager looking at Jira, Trello board, rather than opening it and get an answer, can I really ask this question on, you can connect here to your Trello data or Jira or whatever it is, and then, try to get those answers, right? So it's mobile apps for that, what we call as the momentary information needs. Collaboration. A lot of time today, it's spent on email exchanges. So you're looking at a problem, you have that someone else is responsible for this. You take a screenshot or share a report with somebody, them responding back. So instead, can all the interested parties really engage in a conversation in an application? So that's the idea behind this chat interface. Can the people who are really working on a problem, can they work together along with care, on a data problem, right? Actionable insights. This is what definitely once you have an answer, our platform kind of supports it's, say as simple as you have an answer, you really want to create a task and assign it to somebody. You can create a action item in Trello or in Asana or what, right? Or say, for example, you're looking at an answer, you really want to create a ticket, you can create open service now. Any of those external integration, external third-party business applications, you can, we do have provide a lot of stuff, many of out of the box, right? Um, you just connect it through REST APIs, the data kind of flows from there. It's kind of, it completes the question. Say, another one I can even say, you're looking at a sales data, you really want to run a marketing campaign out of this. So maybe, definitely you can build a hook to your CRM application, Zoho, Salesforce, or whatever it is, right, from here. So there is quite a bit of out-of-the-box integrations which we provide. Plus, we can build any of those custom integrations, for your enterprise applications as well. This is again one way, many of our users use it. There are a lot of traditional legacy reports, they have. So now, with an interface like this, we're just basically saying, let your users define, whatever the reports are, using this, interface. And this can bring back the data, and still, you have an ability to export it in many of the standard formats and consume that information, right? So as as a replacement for, I mean, there are instances where, installations where we had close to 300 plus reports. They were just replaced with a simple interface like this. We connected our application to their enterprise warehouse. And from there, the users are able to run these reports on the fly, right? So yeah, quite a bit of, I mean, we do have quite a bit of happy customers who are already using this for a few years now. And see, the biggest one I would say it's around, or rather the more gratifying or the interesting problems which we have solved. It's all around, in the healthcare or industries where they have their own customer vocabularies. It's not just English, right? Whether it is the engineering space or the medical healthcare space and all that. I think that's where we have seen some very good upticks in terms of how a solution like this has really helped them, right? So as I said, yeah, definitely it's very, very easy to get one up and running with the low code platform. And please, so that's pretty much my last slide. We do offer, definitely, if we want to have a deep dive on any of the underlying technology, or rather, work on a POC or quick start, I mean, be more than happy to. Please do reach out to us, and I'll stop here. See, so this is kind of the summary of it, right? So in the end, in fact, I just thought, I started with a question on ChatGPT. I thought, okay, I'll also end with one, so it's a very interesting space, rather, the days ahead, with what GPT-4 has done, right? But at the same time, can data and analytics really be generative, right? I mean, if you really ask me, at the end of the day, for any machine learning, it is garbage in, garbage out. It's like what kind of data it is being trained on, right? I think definitely the quality of data plays a significant role, and also that could also potentially create a bias. I mean, that's not what we want from data and analytics. We want that to be as much objective as possible. So definitely, you need some good amount of that's why, even going back to the question that was asked, about the trust, it is still very much, within the control of humans. I think, we are responsible for the data quality as much. Some of these AI tools could help you locate those quality problems, but still, or make it easy for us to locate those quality problems. But it is up to us to address it for us, for the insights to be more objective, right? So I thought I'll end with this, in terms of, I also asked this question to ChatGPT, hey, can you analyze large volume of data and produce insights? So the second paragraph is kind of very interesting, in the sense it is definitely, as I was telling you, it depends on the quality and relevance of the data that is provided to me. I think that's the fundamental premise on which any machine learning or AI models kind of operate, right? So and right now, GPT is more on the text-based format, and anything to do with numbers and all, still we really need solutions like here and all that, right? So yeah, so that's the discussion for today. I hope it was useful, and let me pause here for any questions.